Welcome to, welcome to another episode of Thoughts of a Techno Wizard. And today we're going to continue our episode, our series. We're really going to finish our series, most likely, on Anarchy Works. And yeah, we're in the last chapter, chapter 8, The Future. And I'm very excited to finish this book. It's been a very fantastic book. I've learned so much from this book. So it's been really fantastic. And I'm very much looking forward to finishing it and then moving into some other books we got. I might jump into the newest Peter Gutterloo book, or I got some what's his name? Um, goodness, Medigo. I might be saying this wrong, but some. Now I got to pull it up. Now I'm at him. Forgetting the name. Goodness. Modibo Kadili. Social ecology, or we can do the direct democracy, intimate direct democracy. So yeah, we might jump into either one of those after this. I don't know. We'll see. Um, but I'm very excited to do so. So without further ado, let's jump into it. We got much to cover today. Um, Last time we finished chapter 7 was talking about neighboring societies and all that other stuff, and how you can create, a nice allyship. You can work together with other people to break down borders and things like that, which is very important. Create local cultures and support local cultures, um, and just be helpful. All right, just be open to being helpful. So now we're going to talk about the future. Um, and this one starts with, won't the state just reemerge over time? Let's get into it. So it says, we are fighting for our own lives, but also for a world we might never get to see. Now, personally, even though I really appreciate this, right? Like a lot, I like how a lot of anarchists think about this in terms of, oh, we're building for a better future, right? Not just for ourselves, but for our generations to come, right? We're building something for a process that we will never, we might never, actually get to see the end of. But me, as an impatient person, at least in terms of like wanting to live in a better world, because I've been through so much, and I want to live in a better world, right? Like I don't want to end my life feeling like, my kids are going to have to take on the mantle and do the same struggles that I've been struggling with. No, 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 no. I want to end my life knowing that my kids are already in that better world, right? And are dealing with problems. Yeah, they'd probably be dealing with their own issues and conflicts and stuff like that, but they're gonna be dealing with problems at a higher level, right? Like it's not the same bull crap I've been struggling with, that my parents been struggling with, that their grandparents. Nah. Like I want them to be like, okay, we've dealt with like a lot of this racism stuff, sexism stuff, patriarchy, capitalism, all that stuff is now in the past, or at least is dying down. It's not as prevalent, it's not as troublesome, it's not as bothersome. Now we're dealing with higher level issues like, I don't know, going to space, um freaking exploring the oceans, freaking, oh, there's another sentient creature we discovered, and another alien or something like that. I don't know. um or even like, oh, what's a real reality? Now we're figuring out, how to break out of reality because of, psychedelics and stuff like that. I don't know. I want them to deal with problems that me and my generation before me has had to deal with. Like, I want to be done with all this. All right. And maybe that is optimistic, maybe that's unrealistic, but I think shooting for that, right, will allow us to really go far, right? Because I kind of don't like the saying of, oh, shoot for the moon, landing amongst the stars, because that is unrealistic. That's impractical. The moon is incredibly close, right? If you shoot for the moon, you're not gonna end up in the stars. The stars are far away, right? So you have to shoot for the stars. You have to shoot beyond the stars in order to land amongst them. I used to put that on my website all the time. You have to shoot for the stars or beyond them to land amongst them. So that's what I like to, you know, that's why I like to be so ambitious. because that will really allow us to land amongst the stars. So anyway, my little monologue aside, let's continue this. Got people messaging me. Okay. Won't the state just reemerge over time? Most of the examples cited in this book no longer exist. And that's what's unfortunate. And some only lasted a few years. The stateless societies and social experiments were mostly conquered by imperialist powers or repressed by states. But history has also shown that revolution is possible and that revolutionary struggle does not inevitably lead to authoritarianism. Yes, very true. And this is a great point too, because honestly, this is a something that I worried about for a long time, right? I was one of those people who's like, I don't know about revolution, especially now violent revolutions, because they always seem to fall into authoritarianism. But as you begin to learn history, as you actually look into the mechanics of these revolutions, you begin to realize, oh, this is why they fell into authoritarianism and stuff like that. It's not because of just a revolution. It's because the way that they revolved, right? The way that they rebelled. This is why I love anarchism once again, is because it is not the ends justify the means. No, it's the means, um, or however you say, the means create the ends, right? So you have to, in order for you to create an anarchistic world, an egalitarian world, you have to do egalitarian things, right? This is why I'm not a communist or anything like that, because a huge problem with a lot of communism, all right, a lot of socialism, a lot of Marxism, is that they have this borderline, ends justify the means type of thing, and which creates, what we say today. Now, there's a lot of communists and everything like that will say, no, 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 that's not blah 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 blah, and I will hear them out, but it's still true if you read Marx, right, with the very foundation of a lot of, you know, um, communism. He's like, oh, the proletariat will take over the state and they will, be in charge and blah 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 blah. And it just reads as a very, ends justify the means, let's, us be in charge in order for us to create a better thing. And this, but no, anarchism is like, no, let everybody, have as much, like, let's distribute power as much as we can, so that you you just defeat the whole thing, right? So you take down the entire structure of um authoritarianism, right? And that's what makes anarchism so powerful, but it's also what makes it so difficult, right? Because you're fighting not just, you know the current powers, but you're also fighting the people who think, oh, I can do better if I was in charge, right? So you're finding the people who will say, "Oh yeah, let's team up," and then just for them to turn like stab you in the back so they can take power, right? And that's why a lot of these revolutions and a lot of anarchism, movements fell apart, not because the anarchism failed, but because they allied with people who weren't really anarchists, who were ends justify the means type of people. And so that's why you have to be very careful um about how you create these sorts of things. You're not just fighting the current powers, you're fighting the people who also want to be in power, right? And it's not a human nature thing either. I want that to be clear. It's not that, oh, people just want to be, everybody just wants it. No, there's a lot of people that don't want power, right? There's a lot of people that don't want power. But our society, our current society, incentivizes people to want to take power, right? And incentivizes it. It creates that sort of, personality trait. It creates that sort of, and you know, desire, I suppose. So it's not an inevitable human nature. It's encouraged by our current environment. So if we change the environment, right, you'll see less of that. It had to be said. Welcome, welcome. Says, yeah, too many Marxists are great man theorists. Exactly, right, right. They want to say, oh yeah, this person, they're a good one to follow, right? They have some good ideas. Let's everybody listen to him. Let's follow their lead and stuff like that. And where does that end up? So you have to be very careful with that. Like, yes, there are people who are talented. Yes, there are people who are visionaries and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean you go and give them all the power. If they're good at a certain thing, let them do that thing, right? But don't give them all the other power too. For instance, right? I'm a great manager. I would tell you I'm a great manager, right? And I'm not saying that because I'm my self esteem is very low, but I've actually managed people, and they've told me time and time again, "You're a great manager." Right? That doesn't mean I want to do everything, right? That doesn't mean I deserve, all the power to decide who gets what paid what and all this other stuff. No, I'm a great manager because I can understand like the ultimate vision of the company or the project or whatever, and I can get people aligned in certain ways. I can do research and make sure I can go and help make sure people who want to do things in their roles are enabled to do that thing. I go and ask them, hey, what's stopping you and all this other stuff? What can we do? All that stuff, right? I understand how to do that. But that doesn't mean I should be the one deciding, how they should make their living, when they should be, be able to take how many sick days they can take off. Like, no, no. This is why we have a system that says, okay, you want to take sick days and stuff like that, take your sick days, right? And that just means we have to adjust. That just means you have to figure out, okay, this person is off. Let's figure out what we can do instead, right? There's too many systems in our current system, right? Too many ways in our current system in which somebody who has some skill at some sort of leadership also decides everything else, right? For the people that they're leading. And that's what creates this authoritarianism. That's what creates this massive, you know, um, goodness, imbalance in power. So yeah, I'm talking too much. Let me get into it. But yeah, welcome again. It had to be said. I love your videos. Glad you got to jump into a stream. So yeah, they do not inevitably lead to authoritarianism. Authoritarian and revolutionary ideas such as social democracy or Marxist-Leninism have been discredited, have been discredited the world over, while socialist political parties continue to be parasites, sucking at the vital energies of social movements. Predictably selling out their constituencies every time they come to power. A diverse mix of horizontalism, indigenism, autonomism, and anarchism have come to the foreground in all the exciting social rebellions of the last decade. The popular uprisings in Algeria, Argentina, Bolivia, and Mexico, the autonomy in Italy, Germany, and Denmark, the students and insurgents in Greece, the farmer struggle in Korea, and the anti globalization movement that united countries around the world. Beautiful. I love that. These movements have a chance of abolishing the state and capitalism amidst the crisis of the coming years, indeed. And you're going to see more and more of that, right? But at the same time, unfortunately, you also see the rise of fascism, right? And that's because we know that things have to change. Everybody knows that. Okay, most people know that things have to change, right? But unfortunately, not everybody is knowledgeable on how to make that change, right? And how to make it meaningful, how to make it so that we aren't just repeating the same goddamn mistakes we've been making for the last 10,000 years in terms of hierarchy. So this is why it's so important to learn about egalitarianism and all this other stuff to see how we can actually build that better future rather than just rebuilding the same shit we already did. But some people fear that even if a global revolution did abolish the state and capitalism, these would inevitably time. This is understandable because status education has indoctrinated us to believe the myths of progress and unilineal history. The idea that there is only one global narrative and it led inexorably to the ascendancy of Western civilization. In fact, no one knows exactly how the state developed, but it is certain that it was neither an inevitable nor irreversible process. Indeed. And I wonder this now because I think we actually do have some better ideas of how the state developed. With new kind of research in this field. Wow, random spam. I must be getting big now. I got some spam coming in. Let me see if I can block them. Yeah, there we go. Interesting. um, what was I? How the state developed, but it's certain that it was neither an inevitable nor irreversible process. Most societies never voluntarily develop states, and perhaps as many societies develop states and then abandon them as have kept them. Yes, right. That's another book I need to read. Uh, Gelderloo. I'm goodness. Uh, the Davids, Wengrow and in Graeber's Dawn of Civilization. You need to read that. Uh, it had to be said. It says Zizek said fascist takeovers always come on the heels of a failed revolution. I think the current rise of fascism is being met by a rising internet socialism, by rising interest in socialism. Okay, sorry. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I haven't read Zizek yet, so I don't know that person or their ideas. But yeah, this sounds pretty accurate, and you see this happening very much so. Yeah, definitely see a huge interest in socialism. Like I've been, and maybe I might just be in a little bubble, but I don't really think so, right? And I'm going to another brief aside, but oh, the Dawn of Humanity. Yeah, yeah, that's what it's called. But yeah, I was messing around with the Chat GPT thing, and I had it like tell write a song about anarchism, and another I said write a song about capitalism. I didn't give it any other prompts. I just said write a song about anarchism. I actually said in the form of MF Doom, and write a song about capitalism in the form of Eminem. Now it didn't really take the MF Doom and Eminem thing. It has no thing because I did it several times with different artists. It wrote basically the same song with different artists, so it doesn't really have a good understanding of artists. But what's hilarious is that when it wrote about anarchism, it was a very positive thing, like yes, let's build anarchism, stuff like that. And it said when I told it to write about capitalism, it said, oh yeah, let's abolish capitalism, stuff like that. So I don't know what kind of training data this AI is trained on, but it's somehow biased, right, in the way of anarchism and against capitalism. And what that tells me is that because it's trained, I don't know exactly what, but I know it's trained on just internet stuff, right? On just stuff from the web. So that tells me that there's probably a strong, bias, a strong, trend of people writing about anarchism and, just leftist ideas positively, and a strong trend of people writing about capitalism negatively, which tells us that a lot of people, feel the coming change and feel the issues with our current system, which is very interesting, right? Because if you just look at news media, right, with the the left and the right and the news, there's not a whole lot of anarchist stuff on the news, right? You won't hear anything about anarchism on the news, at least not positively. So that tells me there's a schism between what we see in mainstream media and the media in general versus what we see with everyday people just writing things on the internet, which to me is pretty positive. It's pretty interesting to see, but we have to turn that into something good, right? We have to turn that into something meaningful. But let's continue here. And we develop perhaps as many societies develop states and then abandon them as have kept them. From the perspective of these societies, the state may appear to be a choice or an imposition rather than a natural development. Yeah. The timeline we also use also affects our perspective. For tens of thousands of years, humanity had no use for states. And after there are no more states, it would be clear that they were an aberration originating in a few parts of the world that temporarily controlled the destiny of everyone on the planet before being cast off again. Indeed. That's what I love about, like, if you look at the long history of humanity, it's like this blip of time for capitalism, or not even capitalism is even smaller blip, but like for hierarchical organizations, it's only incredibly small, right? Just 10,000 years compared to 200,000 years of human history, of human evolution, right? Compared to 30 to 50,000 years of human civilization or society building, right? Where people, were actually building cities and collect cultures of people and stuff like that, right? So this 10,000 years is really small. And so if we do, um, fix these problems and go beyond this, then this will be a little blip in the history of humanity as we go to space and beyond. So that's what really excites me about this stuff as well. Another misconception is that stateless societies are vulnerable to being hijacked by aggressive alpha males who appoint themselves leaders. Not really. It depends on the environment that's fostered. But let's see what he says. On the contrary, it seems that the big man model of a society has never led to a state or even to a chiefdom. Societies that do allow a bossy, more talented, or stronger man to have more influence typically ignore him or kill him if he becomes too authoritarian. Yep. And the big man is unable to extend his influence very far, geographically or temporally. The physical characteristics on which his leadership is based are ephemeral, and he soon fades out and is replaced. Nice. Yeah, I wonder, the where he's getting to cite this 124. See, for example, Dmitry M. Benderego, a lot of names here. Civilizational models of politogenesis, Moscow Russian Academy of Sciences. Oh, very interesting. You can look up that citation there. Oh, I realized I opened in another tab. So sorry. Yeah, I'm not sharing my other tabs because I got too many. But yeah, you can go look up that citation. But even beyond that, right? If you look up just like theories of how civilizations grew and stuff like that, a lot of it you'll see is not really due to some big man or something like that, some single individual. Yes, that did play a part of it, but the larger piece was this building of a culture, right, of hierarchical, societies versus a culture of egalitarian societies, right? It's, when a certain culture, begins to um move the balance, right, in the favor of one type of group, right? Typically, that's patriarchy. So, for instance, if a society has makes it easier for men to gain more power, right, whether that be access to more food or having, less of a say with women and things like that, then you'll see that building of hierarchy, right? It's not a sudden thing. It takes generations. Um, but as that balance, goes out of whack, you see that hierarchy kind of build up and it gains momentum. But you also see it this other way around with egalitarianism, right? With when it's balanced, that also has momentum and that also can keep its pace. This is why we still have egalitarian societies even today, even amidst all this immensely hierarchical societies that are super powerful, that run a lot of the world. There is still a huge amount of egalitarian societies. There's still a huge amount of egalitarian cultures and egalitarian desires. So you can see that it's not so clear cut, or human nature type of bullshit. All right. It seems that states developed gradually out of culturally kinship systems that coupled gerontocracy with patriarchy. Yep. Over a period of generations, older men were accorded more respect and given a greater exclusivity as the mediators of disputes and the dispensers of gifts. Not until very late in this process did they possess anything resembling a power to enforce their will. Well said. We must remember that as people gradually surrendered more of their responsibilities and afforded certain members of the community more respect, they had no way of knowing the outcomes of their actions, no way of knowing just how bad hierarchical society could become. Exactly. This is my point, right? I like to tell people this. Like, people like to think, oh, we just, in order to go into a civilization, you have to trade off. You have to trade off safety for security or some shit, like, or freedom for safety. I think that's what they actually say. But the reality is that this is not how this works. People don't make a conscious choice to say, yeah, I'm going to trade my freedom so I can have more security. No, right? The truth is that it's a slow and gradual thing. Like, oh, this person is smart, this person is wise and stuff like that. Yeah, let them decide who gets the gifts because they make good choices, right? And so you're following them, yeah, this making choice, and then that they begin to die off and they begin to try to share the wisdom out with other people. They have a son, right? You say, oh, maybe their son would be just like their father, right? Wise and everything like that. But then they're not, right? They're not as wise. You're like, okay, maybe give him a little chance. Maybe he has to grow up a little bit, right? And so, each generation is kind of go like that. It's just like a kind of gradual thing. Like, oh, maybe they can, have this thing, or it might play out where the wise chief or whatever, who really was a good leader, begin to gather some respect and influence for their family group, and so you trust more and more in that family group over time. But other people of that family group, some of them are wise, but some of them are not. But you excuse the ones that are not because the ones that are good, still good people. And so again, this is gradual kind of shifting of power and respect and authority and stuff like that over time. And before you know it, you begin to oh, 3 generations, 4 or 5 generations, you have this very you have this tradition where this family is always in charge. They always give the the make the choices and stuff like that. And now the people of that generation don't actually know why they're in charge. They just take it for granted because they have been. It's always been like that, even though it's only been like that for a couple generations. But after three generations, you no longer know. Like most people don't know their great grandparents and stuff like that. And so after a couple generations, it seems like it's always been like that, right? And so it gains momentum, right? And so that's how these systems, go along, and then people try to justify them. They say, oh yeah, it's like they're like that for a reason, right? Trust in the process, trust in this tradition, in this system and stuff like that. And so people just begin to justify, oh, that yeah, this is why we do it, because it's safe, it's safer this way, even though that's not really true, right? And that wasn't true before, or maybe it was true in this one instance, but then they say, oh, it has to be true, no, in all instances, but that wasn't really the case. And it's funny because this is how the human mind works, right? We make decisions unconsciously or subconsciously, and then we justify why we made those decisions. Our brain is not a rational, brain or anything like that. It rationalizes after the fact, right? We have emotions, we have feelings, and then your brain, the conscious side of your brain, which can only remember a small amount of things, it's very limited, begins to justify why we made those actions, why we feel this way, all this other stuff. So the way in which we retroactively justify um, decisions on a cultural level reflects how we do so on a psychological level, right? In a neurological level. So it's very interesting, but that also shows you that this is not inevitable. That this is not. It doesn't have to be this way. So it's always good to really look into, really drill down to how this stuff works. Let's continue here. Once social elites obtained coercive powers, a new dialectic of social development emerged, and at this point, the creation of the state was likely, though still not inevitable because the majority remained a social force with the power to dispossess the elite or stop the process. Indeed, a lot of people, they would, say, okay, maybe we don't need these leaders anymore. Maybe we can just push them away, right? A lot of them would even kill them if they made really stupid bad decisions. Say, okay, this is it. We're done here, right? But as that momentum keeps continuing, if you don't stop it, it just gets bigger and bigger. It gets harder and harder to shift. Modern societies with collective memory of bureaucratic techniques could redevelop a state much more quickly, but we have the advantage of knowing where that path leads and being aware of the warning signs. Indeed. Right. Once again, before they had no way of knowing that, hey, gradually giving this group of people more and more trust, more and more respect, more and more power will lead down this way. They had no way of knowing that. Right. Same thing for a lot of like colonialism, for instance. Right. When a lot of these like Western powers or these European powers came in, the indigenous people of the time were like, oh, they're just other people, they just want to chill, they just want to do whatever. But they didn't realize, oh no, they want to genocide you. They want to kill all of you off and enslave your people and all this other stuff. They had no way of knowing these things. There was no telephone, there was no internet, there were no books. You can go and see, how these where this will lead. But now we have that. So what's our excuse, right? After having fought hard to win their freedom, people would have plenty of motivation to stop the reemergence of the state if it were occurring anywhere near them. Fortunately, an anarchist society is its own reward. Many stateless societies after colonial contact have had the opportunity to join a hierarchical society and yet continue to resist, such as a Kung. I can't say that right. Sorry, that's a sound. They have like 4 clicks, so I might even be saying that one wrong, but who continue to live in the Kalahari Desert despite the efforts of the Botswana government to settle them. Yeah, this is very interesting too, right? People like to say, well, I've talked about this before. Let me not get into this. But yeah, just go look up the Kalahari Desert folks there. They're amazing. There are also examples of long-standing anti-authoritarian social experiments that thrive within the state of society. Ooh, in Gloucestershire, England, Tolstoyan anarchists founded the Whiteway colony on 40 acres of land in 1898. After they bought the land, they burned the property deed on the end of a pitchfork. Accordingly, they had to build all of their houses themselves since they could not obtain mortgages. Over 100 years later, this pacifist anarchist commune still exists. Over 100 years later, this, oh goodness, I said that right. This is why. And some of the current inhabitants are descendants of the founders. They make decisions in General Assembly and share a number of communal facilities. At times, Whiteway has housed refugees and conscientious objectors. It has also housed a number of cooperative ventures such as a bakery and handcrafts guild. Despite the external pressures of capitalism and hierarchical relationships reproduced by stated society, Whiteway remains egalitarian and anti-authoritarian. Beautiful stuff. Let me drink some water. Ooh, my mouth dry. All that talking. Sorry, I just realized it's 30 minutes long and I'm not even halfway through. I wanted to finish this chapter. Let me stop talking and just read. Goodness. So sorry, y'all. Okay. Across the North Sea in Appalachia, Friesland, an anarchist village celebrated its 75th year in 2008. Amazing. I need to do some research on these. Currently composed of caravans, campers, and a few permanent buildings, the Appalachia site has been active in the anarchist and anti-militarist movement since the priest Domela Nunes left the church and began preaching atheism and anarchism. Excuse me. A group of workers began gathering there and soon acquired land on which they have held yearly anarchist gatherings every Pentecost, hearkening back to the socialist temperance movement, which recognized alcohol as a crippling plague on workers and a form of bondage to employers who sold liquor from company stores. The company is still alcohol free. In 2008, 500 people from all over the Netherlands, as well as Germany and Belgium, attached a yearly anarchist gathering at Appalachia. They joined the anarchists who lived there year round for a weekend of workshops and discussions on subjects including pacifism, animal liberation, the anti-fascist struggle, sexism within the government, within the movement, mental health, and the campaign that kept the Olympics out of Amsterdam in 1992. There were children's programs, presentations on the long history of the camp, communal meals, and enough enthusiasm in the air to promise another generation for anarchism in the region. Awesome stuff. Other anarchist projects can also survive 100 years. Specific societies, communities, and organizations need not to be set in stone. Anarchists do not need to enact restrictive measures to preserve institutions at the expense of their participants. Sometimes the best thing a community or organization can do is for its participants is permit them to move on. Beautifully said. I love that. There are no hereditary privileges or constitutions that must be handed down or imposed on the future. And allowing more fluidity and change, anarchist societies can last much longer. Another great point, right? If you look into the history of empires and civilizations, all of them die. That's what people don't look at. Like every single civilization, has died in the last 10,000 years. The ones that are still alive, like the Khoisan people, the Kalahari folks, are the fluid egalitarian cultures who don't worry about let's try to handle this tradition down for generations. No, let's just go with what works, right? Let's just do what makes sense. Yes, you can pass on culture and knowledge and all the other stuff, but you don't you don't care about the institution above the people. You realize the power is in the people and the institution is just there to help them, right? And it's these societies that are able to adapt over time and last not a couple hundred years, not a couple generations, but thousands of years. 200,000 years to be exact if you look at the Khoisan people. So, yeah. If you really want to talk about how we can, last for millions of years, maybe billions of years, you have to look at these adaptive people who are very flexible in their cultures. The majority of societies throughout history have been communal and stateless, and many of them lasted for millennia until they were destroyed or conquered by Western civilization. But a lot of them still do exist, so it's not even as clear cut as that. The growth and power of Western civilization were not inevitable, but rather the result of specific historic processes, arguably dependent on geographic coincidence. Yes, a lot of this stuff does happen by coincidence. That's another great point, right? This thing is inevitable, but no, if you do this all again, it could be completely different. It's a roll of the dice. The military successes of our civilization might seem to prove its superiority, but even in the absence of resistance, problems endemic to our civilization, such as deforestation and climate change, may well bring about its demise. And it's crazy because you've actually seen this stuff with empires throughout history. A lot of them die by famine, and that famine was created by the civilization itself, you know, um, destroying the land. So revealing it to be an utter failure in terms of sustainability. Other examples of unsustainable hierarchical societies, from Sumer to East England, from Sumer, I think it is, to Easter Island, goodness, Easter Island, show how swiftly a society apparently at its pinnacle can collapse. Yep. The idea that the state will inevitably reemerge over time is another of these hopelessly Eurocentric fantasies in which Western culture indoctrinates people. Dozens of indigenous societies around the world never developed states. They thrived for thousands of years. They have never surrendered, and when they finally triumph against colonialism, they will cast off the impositions of white culture, which includes the state and capitalism, and revitalize traditional cultures, which they still carry with them. But here's the thing, though: there is no white culture. Right? That's what's so crazy about this stuff. There is no white culture. These so-called white people each have their own cultures. Right? Again, white culture just whitewashes like these diverse heritages. Right? Europe is full of so many heritage, so many types of cultures and everything like that. But it's all being just meshed together into white culture. Right? So whenever I see people like, "Oh, we got to care. Why you care? Why you talking about white culture?" Well, what you realize is that white culture is really just colonialism. It's really just a bunch of people who are trying to take power over everybody else at the cost of their own heritages, right? If you want to care about your culture, your heritage, then care about that rather than trying to, meld in with this, mm, um, this monotheistic or monologue, not monologue, but like monogamous, right? This very bland, thing that is nobody's culture. Everybody has their own culture, so go into more of that rather than trying to meld with everything else. Many indigenous groups have experienced going back hundreds or even thousands of years of contact with the state, and at no point have they voluntarily surrendered to state authority. Western anarchists have much to learn from this persistence, and all people from Western society should take the hint. The state is not an inevitable adaptation; it is an imposition, and once we learn how to defeat it for good, we will not let it come back. Awesome. So I probably won't be able to, do all this much. I gotta gotta make some moves. But I think I could do this portion. No, actually, no, I ended there. I ended there. I'll probably do this. I'll finish the book next time, unfortunately. But I am free this week, so I'll probably do another one tomorrow. So yeah, I'll end it there. Thanks as always for reading with me, for bearing with me, especially you. It had to be said. Thank you for joining the stream today. Um, and let me know what you all think, as always, about what you learned today, your thoughts on these different things, agree or disagree. And yeah, have a great day. Keep being awesome and see ya. Bye bye.